physical, right? They are shaped by your lived experiences, the emotional stress, medical trauma, and the daily toll of navigating a system that often doesn't see the full picture. So tonight we're going to uncover why that happens and how we can support your healing from the inside out. My hope is that after tonight, you'll leave with a more clear understanding how stress impacts skin. And when I say skin, I'm including skin and hair in that. Yeah. Understanding how stress impacts skin, hair, and mental health. And to leave with some practical tools that you can use right away to support your nervous system. And maybe most importantly, a sense of, or a greater sense of connection, because I know this community is strong, that you're not alone in this. Yeah. So before we begin, I would love to just offer a reminder. Yeah, that a reminder to take care of yourself during tonight's webinar. And if at any time you need to take a break or don't want to engage in anything I'm offering, just do what feels right for you. Everything I'm going to offer is an invitation, it's not a requirement. And before we dive in, I know that we are coming in from all parts of the country, different time zones. So I always like to invite us into the collective space by arriving together. So we can arrive honoring whatever happened before this, whatever might need to happen after this, that may be impacting what's here for you right now and making space for it. Right? So whether you're feeling tired, if you're feeling frazzled, you're feeling frustrated, maybe you're feeling excited, all parts of you are welcome here. So I just want to invite you all just to take a few moments to settle in, making yourself comfortable in whatever way that looks like for you, right? Maybe grabbing an extra pillow, adjusting yourself in your seat, right? And the invitation is just to turn your attention inward, right? Maybe it's inward is more just about averting your eyes from the screen to minimize distraction. Or if closing your eyes feels more comfortable for you, do whatever feels right, right? Maybe perhaps feeling your feet connected to the ground. Maybe feeling gravity supporting you in your chair. And the next invitation is just bringing attention to your breath, right? Simply checking in, noticing if you've been holding your breath since the start of this webinar, right? Maybe inviting an extra long exhale, letting the parts of you that may not want to be here, letting them know that you've got them, that they're welcome here. Perhaps setting an intention for what you hope to walk away with from our time together today. Maybe just taking another moment and then letting that go. And I just love to hear maybe what you noticed, what's happening now, right? Maybe noticing if there's any shift in your felt sense of presence from when you first logged on to Zoom to what you might be feeling now. Yeah. Did anyone, you can pop it in the chat. I don't know if I can actually see the chat. I don't know where it went. Oh, there it is. And you can pop it in the chat if you'd like, or open up your mic if you noticed any sort of shift. Yeah. Did you notice, were you holding your breath? Was it easy to take a deeper breath? Yeah. Most of the time when I ask that, people realize, oh my God, my shoulders were up by my ears. I didn't even realize it. Or I had been holding my breath that whole time. I noticed for myself that I had been breathing a little bit more shallow. And as I was sharing with you, I noticed that I could breathe with just a little bit more ease. Yeah. So you can always pop it in the chat if you're ready. If not, that's okay too. And you might be wondering, well, why did we even do that? Yeah. What did we do and why did we do that? Well, when our mind is racing, if we're feeling distracted, we're tired from all that you have on your plate, personally, professionally, it can make it much more difficult to be present to our lives in real time. Yeah, it can leave us feeling anxious, it can leave us feeling overwhelmed, depressed, negatively impacting our emotional and mental well-being. And then if we layer on the physical discomfort or of physical ailments like alopecia, the inflammation, the irritation, and the challenges this brings, right? It might be a little bit easier to understand how the results of a recent survey revealed that 98% of patients with skin disease, and skin disease, again, when I'm saying skin, I'm including hair in that. 98% of patients reported that their condition affected their emotional and psychological well-being, right? And so then it makes so much sense, right? When we think about skin and hair conditions like alopecia, like eczema or psoriasis, right? We might often focus on the skin surface, the inflammation, the increased shedding, right? But a skin issue or a hair issue, right, is rarely just a hair issue. And you know better than anyone that living with a condition like alopecia means managing the uncertainty of when will a next flare happen, right? Will I lose more hair? How bad will it be? Is it going to interfere with my capacity to go to work? Is it going to interfere with my capacity to get out of my house, right? Just to be in relationships or just to live your life. And in addition to the physical symptoms, right? The itch, the irritation, the inflammation that so many of you had to deal with, there's also the social stigma, right? Maybe the medical gaslighting of, it's not that bad, or some of you going years with misdiagnoses, right? So it's not just the physical discomfort, which can be very challenging in and of itself. You know that better than anyone. But noticing and naming that you've also had to deal with the ongoing experience of distress, unpredictability, uncertainty, which can impact our sense of self, that can create feelings of shame and isolation. So I just want to share some of these statistics, really just to name and normalize how prevalent the impact of skin and hair issues are on mental health, right? Research highlights that 1 in 3 patients experience psychiatric morbidity. A survey that was done said that 88% of patients reported feeling embarrassed by their condition. 85% reported mental health issues stemming from living with their condition. And there was another study that showed that 80% of patients with hair loss reported depression or anxiety, with symptoms increasing with the severity of alopecia and the stigma. Yeah. And it's not just the stress of dealing with hair loss, right? As we dive deeper in just a bit, studies also show significant association between adverse childhood events and developmental trauma and the development of alopecia, with patients reporting higher rates of post-traumatic stress, anxiety, depression, and suicide risk. Right? So if you've ever felt any of those things, anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, feeling stressed out, just know that you're actually in the vast majority. And this is why mental health integration isn't optional for managing hair loss, right? It's essential, right? When your nervous system begins to regulate, your skin has the conditions to begin healing too. So you might be wondering, okay, great. So what does this have to do with alopecia? Well, essentially everything, because our skin isn't just a passive barrier, right? The brain, the skin, and the nervous system are all derived from the same embryologic tissue known as the ectoderm. So they're intimately connected and they're talking to each other all the time like a two-way street, right? Real time example. I'll give an example, right? I'm really excited to be here with you tonight, but I'm also a little bit nervous. So my palms are a little bit cold and clammy. That's real time mind skin communication, right? But that two-way street becomes a 4-lane highway with far-reaching effects as part of what is known as the NICE network. Now, the NICE network is a network that coordinates responses from our internal and external environments with our nervous system acting as command central. Really, what it does is it tells the rest of the body how to respond based on the information it's taking in from those environments and whether it interprets that information as dangerous from an actual threat or just the perception of one, or cues that offer safety. So when the nervous system picks up danger or warning, it alerts the immune system, the cutaneous or skin system, and the endocrine system, right? So the nice network is nervous system, immune system, cutaneous system, and the endocrine system. And if the nervous system, as command central, picks up cues of danger or warning, it's going to tell all the other systems to go into defense mode, which means cortisol is going to spike, your primary stress hormone, inflammation is going to increase, healing is going to slow down. This is also where sleep disturbances come in, which we know sleep is so important for balancing stress hormones. For melatonin is created predominantly when we sleep at night, and melatonin plays a significant role in the hair growth cycle. Yeah. So cortisol is supposed to go down at night, melatonin is supposed to go up, but when the stress response is activated, that balance shifts. So when we experience sleep disruption and the body doesn't have the same opportunity to heal. And because the skin and the nervous system are part of the body's stress surveillance and response system, this means that your skin, the skin of your scalp isn't just a barrier, right? It's also a messenger. It hears the story that your nervous system is telling, and it's speaking it out loud. So what's really key to understand is that in addition to being part of that larger nice network, the skin itself is a neuroimmunoendocrine organ, which is a big word, which means that your skin can both generate stress hormones and sex hormones and inflammatory signaling. It also has many sensory receptors, right? So it's a target of the stress response. But what's more important to understand is that the skin itself is a stress response organ with its own, what we call the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which means it has the capacity to generate stress hormones and it sends messages back to the nervous system, right? That's why patients with chronic skin conditions like alopecia often report worsening flares in times of stress. Right? Because the skin is both a target and a source of the stress response, fueling chronic inflammation, itching, pain, and the emotional fallout of that, like shame and anxiety, which is why alopecia can be so frustrating. And also helps explain why the skin is actually like the loudest billboard of cues that are coming in. But here's the good news, right? We can change the cues coming in, and we can also reframe the meaning that we give to them so that the communication within the systems can help things settle down, which means that gives you more options for hair care, right? Moving it from more of a corrective routine trying to fix to a reparative relational ritual, right? The relationship between the mind, the skin, and the nervous system, the relationship we have to our skin and body, and improving the communication among these symptoms. Because the truth is that the skin, right, the skin of your scalp isn't overreacting, it's overwhelmed, right? We know stress is a known trigger and aggravator of alopecia. So I don't have the exact statistic, but it's not insignificant that I think it was 70, it was high, that individuals with alopecia were diagnosed with anxiety and depression. Add to that, right, then navigating the stigma, the shame, or social avoidance, feeling dismissed or misunderstood by caregivers, doctors, friends, maybe even family. That lived experience alone can overwhelm the nervous system, right? And that overwhelm becomes its own kind of trauma. The definition of trauma, right? Stress is a normal biologic adaptation. Stress is not a bad thing, right? We're wired to manage stress. We need stress in our lives to grow, to thrive, right? But when our capacity to adapt is overwhelmed, things are happening too fast, too soon, or things are happening for too long with too little support, it overwhelms our capacity to adapt. And that's when trauma happens. And when the distress of living with a condition like alopecia can becomes too much, right? Naturally, you want to do whatever you can to cope. And there's no shame in that, right? Often, but that means that sometimes our coping strategies mean that we are directing the frustration inward. Maybe we're getting angry at our skin, our hair, blaming our body, feeling betrayed by it. And then the coping strategies, many of which are misunderstood, but they actually make perfect sense in terms of the nervous system, right? Things like skin picking, hair pulling, nail biting, lip licking, right? These aren't just bad habits. They're actually attempts to discharge the stuck energy, right? To regulate when the body feels overwhelmed and the system feels like it has no other outlet, right? Or maybe you have found yourself trying to cope by over scrolling on social media, over drinking, over working, over shopping, right? Not because you're lazy or undisciplined, but because these are attempts to regain a sense of control in a world and a body that feels unpredictable, right? So I just want to name that these behaviors aren't the problem, right? They're your body's best effort to self-soothe when it hasn't been taught other ways. So the invitation is instead of judging them, can we get curious? Because behind every coping strategy is a nervous system just trying to feel safe. And I know many of you know that this can create a vicious cycle, right? Right? There's the itch, the irritation, the pain, the more hair loss, and that can create stress. So there's activation of the stress response, release of stress hormones, more inflammation, more flare, leading to more anxiety, negative self-talk and shame. And the cycle continues, keeping the nervous system stuck in protection mode, which will disrupt that entire nice network and fuels both the onset and the worsening of alopecia. So I want to take a step back just for a moment, right? And talk about stress. Because the first step is knowing what's happening in your body and knowing how you respond to stress, right? Noticing where in your body you might feel it. How do you react to it? And when do stressful moments that feel overwhelming happen, right? I know many of us live at a certain level in stress and say, like, I'm fine. I'm not stressed, right? This is just how I am. I don't know, can anyone relate with that? Right? But when we stop and get curious, we can notice what stress feels like in our body, right? Maybe it's your shoulders that are up by your ears, or, clenching your jaw or feeling tension in your jaw, right? As someone living with alopecia, when life gets chaotic, right? Whether it's personal obligations, professional obligations, where do you notice it? Physically, mentally, emotionally? I'd love to just hear when you get stressed, what do you notice? You can open up your mic, you can put it in the chat. I know for me, my shoulders are up by my ears most of the time. I don't even realize it. And I have to intentionally bring them down. So I'm curious for those of you who are here, what happens? What lets you know that you're stressed? Does your heart start racing? Do you feel your heart beating out of your chest? Does your stomach get in knots, a lump in your throat, your shoulders? Yeah. Tension in the jaw, headache. Yeah. Can't breathe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Right? That awareness is so important, right? So spend more time on my own. Isolation, that is a common one, right? Things get too overwhelming. We don't want to burden anyone. We don't want to bother anyone, or if we feel more irritable, we just want to be on our own. I'm right there with you, Joanne. So thank you for reflecting with me. So I just want to go a little bit deeper, right? Into understanding what's happening inside the body. Because the first thing that registers stress in your system isn't your brain, right? We often think of like stress as being in our brain, but it's actually in your nervous system, right? What you just noticed, the can't breathe, feeling the headaches, or noticing your shoulders tense, or that desire or compulsion or urge to isolate, right? whether the sensations, the thoughts, the behaviors, right? They're not random. They're actually your nervous system speaking. So the symptoms that we experience, whether it's flare-ups with inflammation, itch, pain, anxiety, or any discomfort, they're all signals from the nervous system trying to get our attention, right? So the guiding question we can use is, what is my nervous system trying to tell me through this symptom? Right? The symptom might be physical, like tension or pain. It might be emotional, like irritability or overwhelm or wanting to isolate. Yeah. Either way, it's a form of communication. And our body speaks through physical sensations. Yeah, that's the language it speaks. And the invitation and opportunity is, can we hear what it's trying to say? Right? And the thing is, this process is dynamic. It's happening continuously in your body. And it's important to understand that the nervous system doesn't react to just physical things, right? It responds to emotional and environmental cues too. And it tries to get our attention first as a whisper, right? For example, um, it might start off as worry, right? Or itch or irritation. And if we aren't paying attention, those symptoms start to get louder. It might evolve into anxiety, into burning and excruciating pain, or insomnia. And if we continue to ignore the signals or override them, the body starts to scream, right? From worry to maybe some anxiety. Now it could just be a full-on panic attack or shutdown or a full body flare, right? The signals are going to take more and a more extreme action to get our attention because that is the nervous system's job, right? This isn't your body betraying you, right? I really want to emphasize that. It's really your body's way of protecting you. It's saying, hey, hey, something doesn't feel safe. Please pay attention. And in alopecia, right, those signals can feel constant, overwhelming. And that doesn't mean that you're broken. It means that your nervous system has been working overtime in survival mode for a really long time. Because your nervous system is like your own personal surveillance system, right? Your nervous system is constantly scanning for your environments for cues of safety or threat, or that feel like either a welcome, right, or a warning. And the thing is, this scanning, right, the surveillance, it's happening automatically beneath our conscious awareness. It's what Dr. Stephen Porges coined as neuroception. And it's how the body decides who or what is safe without a single conscious thought, right? So from someone's facial expression, the tone of their voice, eye contact, all of it becomes a signal for your nervous system. This means that we don't choose whether to feel safe with someone or in a situation. Our body does. And one of my mentors, Deb Dana, breaks down neuroception into three domains: the inside or the embodied pathway, right? What's happening in our body, your heart rate, breath, a sense of tension, thirst, hunger. The outside or environmental pathway, the sights, the smells, whether the environment is cluttered or uncluttered, right? And the in between, the relational field, how it feels to be with another person. And at any moment, our nervous system asking, is this a welcome or is it a warning? Yeah. So I'm going to invite you into several practices during our time together. And again, everything is an invitation, not a directive. And this is one of them, right? So if you're open to it, you can do this as a silent reflection, or if you've got a piece of paper, you can draw a vertical line down the middle of that paper. And on one side, write the word safety and the other danger. Or if I'll name, I use those words for teaching purposes. Not every nervous system enjoys those words or resonates with those words. So if it doesn't feel right or it's triggering in any way, you can choose words that land for you. Maybe it's welcome and warning, or simply a yes or a no, right? You get to decide what feels like the right fit. So we're going to move through each of the three pathways, and I want you to just notice at least one cue of safety or welcome and one cue of danger or warning, right? Both matter because we can't fully thrive unless we can name the signals of danger and actively engage with cues of safety. And because our brains are wired for survival, our inclination, the actual human behavior, right, it's easy for us to fixate on what feels off or unsafe, right? What's wrong, and overlook actually what can support us. So I'm going to invite us to try this together, right? Maybe just take a moment, just turn your attention inward. Again, whatever that looks like for you, averting your gaze, maybe closing your eyes, um, and just take a moment to check in with what's happening inside your body, right? Get curious. What am I feeling right now? Am I thirsty? Am I tired? Am I cold? Right? What's going on in your belly, your breath, your chest? Is there tension? Is there achiness? Is there warmth? Maybe there's some softness or steady heartbeat. Yeah. So write down just one cue for the welcome or the safety, and one cue that signals danger, right? Your body's way of saying, I'm not okay, right? If you notice more than one, totally great, but just capture what you can, right? So for me right now, just to give you an example, um, the soft fabric of my sweater feels calming on my skin. That's a cue of safety. My throat feels a little bit dry, so that's a mild cue of warning, of distress. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to the outside pathway, your environment, right? Looking around at the colors, the textures, the shapes, the objects. What in your space feels supportive right now? Right? Maybe it's just the solid feel of the chair beneath you or the softness of the natural light. And what might feel like a cue of danger. Maybe there's a distracting noise outside or a cold draft of air, or there's clutter in your line of sight. Yeah. Again, you're just jotting down one cue for the welcome, one cue for the warning from your surroundings. Okay. Now the between pathway. And this one is my favorite because it's the one that we often overlook. This is the space between nervous systems, right? It's relational. Your neuroception is constantly picking up cues from facial expressions, from posture, from tone of voice, even before your thinking brain kicks in. So as you sit here, maybe look around the Zoom room, yeah? And just notice, do you feel a pull towards someone's smile? Or do you notice yourself withdrawing a little when your eyes meet another? Yeah? Those are real signals. They're not good or bad, they're simply information, right? So just noticing what you notice. A sense of welcome or openness with someone, a subtle tightening or hesitation. And here's the important part. These cues are about your nervous system, right? Not the other person. So if someone's face brings up a cue of danger, it doesn't necessarily mean they're unsafe. It means that your body remembers something familiar in that expression or that energy. So I just invite you just to take a quick look at your list and just notice, what did you discover, right? Because each of these cues is shaping your experience, either helping you feel grounded and ready to connect or nudging you into a stress response. And just noticing, that's significant, right? It's the first step towards choice and increasing your capacity to be more responsive rather than reactive. So just getting curious, what's here for you in this moment? So I just want to talk about the equation that your nervous system is always working with based on those pathways, even if, right, it's out of your conscious awareness. When cues of safety outweigh the cues of danger, your nervous system feels regulated, right? This is where we feel more open, more grounded, we can be curious, you can engage with life from a place of presence. Doesn't mean that stressors aren't present, but it means that you are able to kind of ride the waves of stress with more ease. But when the cues of danger start to outweigh safety, your body shifts into survival mode. And the first stop is fight or flight, right? That might look like anxiety, irritability, urgency, anger, our heart speeds up, our mind starts racing. We might feel flushed and agitated and irritated. This is where flares can happen, right? And when that does happen, a familiar story usually kicks in, right? Maybe it's your anxiety story. Maybe it's your shutdown story, right? Withdrawing. Whatever your nervous system learned to tell you in order to make sense of the distress you were experiencing, right? So we're going to start to explore that pattern by looking at what happens between input of cues, right, from those pathways, what comes into your system, and how your body responds. Because every moment your nervous system is assessing, is this a welcome or is this a warning? And that assessment, your neuroception, is shaping your experience before your conscious mind catches up. So, based on the cues that your nervous system attunes to and how that shifts the balance of the equation, it then can take you down one of two pathways. The pathway of connection, right? Which is the regulated, ready, engaged, curious, compassionate, even when you are in the midst of dealing with your condition, you can have a little bit more kindness towards yourself, right? All those beautiful things. Or you might go down the pathway of protection, right? The fight or flight, the collapse, the disconnect. And it is your nervous system that's making that determination, which again, I often think we often think that it's our brain deciding, but it's not, right? Because your nervous system is your surveillance system. It's constantly scanning your environments. It's acting like command central, and it's instructing all the other systems in your body what to do, including your brain. And based on that information, the nervous system sends it. Your brain then makes up a story to try and make sense of all the information coming in, right? But your nervous system's already made a decision. Are you going to travel down the path of connection or the path of protection? And in working with the nervous system, it's not so much what happened, right? As it is, how did your nervous system respond to what happened, right? And if we think about that with, let's say, anxiety, right? The same event, the same input across this amazing community of learners, right? Will bring different autonomic responses, right? Many of us will have a different response. Some of us will go down that path of connection, others down the path of protection, right? So it doesn't serve us so well to stick with what happened, right? Yes, knowing what might have triggered or an event that might have happened is helpful. But the curiosity is really, how did your nervous system respond to that moment? That's what we're curious about, right? So we're going to look at what a regulated system and a dysregulated system look like so you can kind of get a better sense. Before I move on, I just want to quickly check in. Does anyone have any questions with what I just covered? I know that's a lot. I'm kind of doing a speed speed webinar on applied polyvagal theory here. Any questions? You can always pop them in the chat if you do. Okay, so we'll move on. Okay, so now that you have tuned into how your nervous system listens, let's talk about how your nervous system is working. So using a polyvagal lens, Dr. Stephen Porges is the one who came up with the polyvagal theory. And Deb Dana uses a polyvagal ladder. I personally find it easier to imagine our nervous system like an elevator, moving between floors based on the cues of safety or danger that it picks up through the different pathways. So the top floor is what one of my clients labeled as the penthouse. This is the ventral vagal pathway. This is where even when stressors are happening, we feel more calm, we feel more connected, we feel more balanced, we're resourced, we feel resourceful, right? We can be present to our experience, right? We can relate, we can reflect, we can respond with intention, we're open to new ideas. This is the prime state where all systems are communicating, with more ease. Our immune system is regulated. It's really the conditions that are conducive to healing. If the nervous system picks up cues of danger, the elevator moves from the penthouse to that middle floor. This is the sympathetic nervous system activation. This is where fight or flight happens. This is where the body is mobilizing to take action, right? Our mind races, our heart races. We are ready to take action. This is where inflammatory cytokines are released. Stress hormones surge. This is where we see acute flares of conditions, yeah? This is where we might experience anxiety, anger, restlessness. This is kind of like we've gone into survival, yeah? If the nervous system can't fight or flee its way out of the situation, the elevator moves down to the basement. This is the dorsal vagal state. This, instead of being in survival mode, this is in conservation mode. We are immobilizing. We're slowing things down to conserve energy. You might feel collapsed, disconnected, numb, shut down. Instead of feeling anxious, you may feel more depressed, right? Energy is low. There's no motivation. This is where instead of acuity of flares, this is where we see chronicity of conditions, right? The body just feels like it has no way to repair. So I just want to name the goal isn't to be in the penthouse all the time. The goal is to have that elevator moving between the floors, between the different nervous system states all day with fluidity and flexibility so that it can appropriately respond to the cues coming in, right? There are times where you want to be on that middle floor, like when you want to dance, when you want to play, when you want to engage, right? You need that mobilization, you need that energy. There are also times where you want to be in the basement, right? You need to conserve energy. You need to repair. There's also blended states, right? Where intimacy and cuddling, right? You don't want to be all jazz. You want to be immobilized and kind of, slowing things down. So I just want to name there is no bad or wrong nervous system state. Each state carries wisdom and information for you, right? There's no right or wrong, better or for worse. We need all of them in service of our survival, right? To play, to be creative, for intimacy. Feeling our difficult emotions like shame or sadness or fear is what increases our access to the happy emotions like joy and pleasure, right? So the problem isn't that you shift between states. The challenge is when the elevator gets stuck, right? And when you live with a chronic um, condition, right? You may live in chronic sympathetic drive or dorsal shutdown, and you can get stuck on those lower floors, one or the other, or ping ponging between them, and it can overtax our systems and networks. So, living into our most authentic, our whole self isn't simply about surviving, yeah, we also have an opportunity to thrive, which means that we can create conditions that make it easier for transition between the states, to increase our nervous system's flexibility and resilience so we don't get stuck in states that overtax our systems and our networks. So I'm curious, right? In order to get that elevator moving, right? First, you have to know what floor you're on, right? You have to get to know what each of the floors feel like so you know what to offer yourself in terms of support when you need it and how to get unstuck. So if you're open to it, I'd love for you to just check in and get curious, right? What floor is your elevator on now? Yeah. And so to help you get familiar, and where you might find yourself. I'm going to quickly go through one floor at a time, but I invite you to just get really curious. What sensations, what breath patterns or body cues might inform your answer of what floor you're on, right? So maybe you notice that you're in the penthouse when you think about people who are important to you, right? You go out in nature, you listen to music, you enjoy quiet time with your pet, you've got your feet in the ocean. In those moments, what happens to your breath? Where are your shoulders, right? Where is their tension? Yeah, or ease, right? But what happens when we're missing that regulation of ventral, right? What happens when the ventral pathway can't regulate, when the world feels too big, too overwhelming, too busy, too dangerous? Is your mind racing? Is your heart racing? Are your thoughts swirling? Are you feeling restless, annoyed, irritable, anxious, right? And just notice, is that happening now? Or in the basement, right? That dorsal vagal system takes hold when you feel trapped without options. You don't feel like you matter, right? If you feel numb or disconnected, depressed or exhausted, just, feeling helpless or hopeless. So just noticing, right? Where are you now? Which floor feels most aligned with your energy, your breath, your thoughts? And what sensations or breath patterns or body cues let you know where you are? Okay. So I'm going to move right along because I want to make sure that we have time. If your elevator does get stuck, and listen, all of our elevators are going to get stuck at some point, how do we get our elevators moving again, right? We get our elevator moving again by offering new cues of safety, things that help the nervous system feel supported instead of threatened, right? To help quiet the alarm bells on that alarm surveillance system, right? And this is where the vagus nerve comes in. I don't know if you've heard of the vagus nerve before, but the vagus nerve is like the nervous system's communication superhighway, right? The vagus nerve is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. It's really kind of that rest and digest state. And the vagus nerve runs from the brainstem with connections that innervate the face, your throat, your heart, your lungs, your gut. And it acts like the motor that keeps that elevator moving with fluidity and flexibility. And here's the really important thing to keep in mind. Greater than 80% of vagus nerve fibers send messages from the body to the brain, not the other way around. The vagus nerve is sending messages from all the information it picks up from the body to the brain, and then the brain uses that information to tell all the other systems how to function, to regulate digestion, our heart rate, our hormones, our emotional state. When our vagal tone is strong, there's smoother transitions between nervous system states, lower stress, less inflammation, better emotional regulation, more resilience. When vagal tone is weak, the elevator tends to get stuff, more stress reactivity, inflammation, emotional overwhelm, right? What that means is we need to use a bottom up, from the body up, not the brain down, right? We can use a bottom up approach through movement, through touch, through sound, through breath, right? To help shift states, right? You don't just think your way out of stress. Oftentimes when we're stressed, our thinking brain goes offline. We really can't. We lose our capacity to think clearly, right? So we have to feel our way towards safety. So I want to show you how. So you walk away from tonight knowing that you have some practical, actionable tools that you can use. So if you find yourself stuck on that middle floor, right? You feel irritable, things are just moving fast and overwhelmed, right? Leverage that energy, right? Maybe you try shaking out your hands or shaking out your arms or shaking out your whole body. I have a mentor who always said, like wiggle, squiggle, squirm, and shake, I think. Wiggle, squiggle, squirm, and shake. And I always thought that was so helpful, right? We just got to get that energy out, right? Or maybe it's progressive muscle relaxation, right? Leaning into the tension. So you can always start with your fists, and this is something you can do in public. You can have your fists in your pocket or just by your side, and you squeeze them, squeeze, 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 and let go. You do it again, squeeze, 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 and let go. Maybe do it a third time, squeeze, 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 and let go. I don't know about you, but when I do that, I can just take a deeper breath. And you can do that with your arms, squeezing into your sides and let go. You can, right, for those of us who have their shoulders by their ears, right? You can lean in and squeeze, 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 and let go. And just notice. I know I'm going through this quickly, but if you do it on your own, just notice what happens after you do that a few times. Notice if there's a shift in the tension, right? These movements help metabolize the adrenaline and move the energy through that feels like too much. Heel raises, I'm sitting at the moment, but heel raises up and down can also be really helpful. And again, you could be doing this standing in the grocery line, waiting, you can do this anytime, anywhere. No one will actually know that you're doing it, right? People shift and move all the time. And you could be supporting yourself through bringing more regulation into your system anytime, anywhere. If you find yourself stuck in the basement, right, in that frozen state, movement is also medicine here as well. But when we're frozen, we can't do as big movements. Yeah. So we focus on smaller movements, micro movements. Maybe it's just your eyes orienting, looking around the room at the colors, the textures, the shapes, allowing your eyes to settle on something that brings a little comfort, right? Humming, right? The vagus nerve goes on either side of our vocal cords, and humming, chanting, singing creates vibration and naturally stimulates that vagus nerve, right? When we're frozen, sometimes we can't feel. So gentle arm squeezes, right? Or leg squeezes, wiggling your fingers, wiggling your toes to remind you, I'm here, right? I'm here. And you can feel the edges of your body again. These simple practices help reawaken your awareness when the nervous system has gone into that freeze or collapse state. And if you happen to find yourself in the penthouse, right? How can you linger? How can you savor that? How can you increase your capacity to be here? Beautiful ways to luxuriate in the penthouse is through your breath, right? Soft belly breathing, breathing in through your nose, feeling your belly expand, exhaling through your mouth, breathing in through your nose, feeling your belly expand, exhaling through your mouth, feeling your belly soft and relax on that exhale, and even extending the exhale. The extension of the exhale activates the vagus nerve, right? Or maybe it's just a gentle, compassionate self-touch, hand on the heart, hand on your belly, right? How can you linger? These build your capacity to be in this state, yeah? And increase nervous system flexibility over time. It really rewires how you relate to stress and to yourself, right? And again, the goal isn't to stay regulated all the time. We're all going to lose it at some point. The invitation is, can you recognize when you've kind of gone above or below, right? And you've shifted into the middle floor of the basement so you can support yourself where you are and return to a felt sense of yourself, right? As quickly as you can, or as is feasible, right? So that's what we call nervous system literacy. It's not just um, a skill, right? It's a practice that requires consistency, but it's something that you can do anytime, anywhere. So I don't know if we have time for it, maybe a few minutes, but if you're open to it, um, I want to invite you. I'll stop sharing for a second. Um, so that you can see me. And if you're open to doing a short practice, we can do it together so that you can take these practices to do one at a time, or you can kind of do a flow with me. Um, so I would just invite you to begin just by just gently rotating your wrists in circles, maybe 5 in one direction, and then changing direction. And then we're going to take our hand and just gently rub them together, slowly generating some warmth. And then as you're warming up your hands, I'm going to take off my glasses and gently sweep. This is called a little havening. Gently sweep the hands across the forehead, across the cheeks, across the jaw, maybe stopping at the ears. Your ears are rich in vagus nerve fibers, the lobes, the helix, inside the ears. I don't know if you've ever used Q-tips and thought, oh my God, that feels so good. It's because your ears have so many vagus nerve fibers, yeah? And then gently sweeping your arms. What this does is, by doing cross-body sweeps, it's integrating the right and left sides of your brain, making connection. Yeah. And then maybe just noticing your breath, maybe loosening your jaw. If any sounds want to come out, just they're welcome. And then we'll just open up the arms. Maybe cross what we do, a little rainbow with one arm and the other. Again, this is just cross body, allowing the right and left sides of the brain. reintegrate. And then lastly, you can always hands behind the head. And we're going to mirror the natural breath cycle. So this is bird wings. So with the arms extended on our inhale, and exhale, we fold forward, exhaling through the mouth. Inhale, letting our wings spread, and exhale, letting our wings close. Maybe just doing that at your own pace for a few more breaths. Activation of the sympathetic on the inhale, and activation of that parasympathetic on the exhale, right? So our body's meant to go through these different states, but we can invite it into being in those states in cadence with its natural rhythm. And then when you're ready, you can just let that go, maybe shaking out your arms, allowing your hands just to settle in your lap. And just notice what's happening inside now with your thoughts, your energy, your breath, your mind. And so I'm going to just share my screen again. I think we have just a few minutes just to see if there's any questions, any comments, any what you might have noticed. Ready for bed. I don't blame you, Joyanne. Thank you for coming. Does inability to manage stress cause alopecia? You know, the research, I wouldn't say, when we talk about any condition, it's never just one thing. But we do know that chronic and traumatic stress can trigger, exacerbate alopecia. And so there are certainly it is, and stress, right? Mental, we're talking about mental, emotional stress, but everything is a stressor, yeah? The quality of our sleep, the air pollution, the sun exposure, the people that we're with, right? Sleep, nutrition, how we move our body. Do you move it too much or too little, right? It's all about that Goldilocks principle. So stressors in all their different forms definitely can contribute, right? Because the nervous system is command central telling all the other systems how to function. I see Tino, thank you. That feeling responsible for too many people keeping me stuck on that floor. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And again, this isn't about shame or blame. Like we can get stuck on a floor, right? We were made to experience all the floors, but that awareness of like, okay, who might I be able to delegate to? Are there other people that I can lean into, right? That can be a source of support. Let's see. I've been diagnosed with sleep apnea, did a home sleep study, and found out my diagnosis. Took the test because I was so tired. Will this affect my ability to control my FFA? Sleep is important, right? Sleep impacts our mood, our, capacity to think clearly. And again, that cortisol melatonin balance. Melatonin um, is one of the most potent antioxidants our body produces to help repair the damage that's incurred day to day. So I would offer that getting the diagnosis is wonderful because now you have an opportunity to, well, how can I support myself through this, right? It doesn't mean that you won't be able to control it, but you might notice if you're sleep apnea, if you're more tired than usual and consistent, not getting enough sleep, you might notice, oh, I'm not, my hair status might be exacerbated, right? But we know hair growth cycles, happens. It might not be immediate. It might be 3, 6 months down the road. So I think whatever you can do to nourish yourself in all facets to get the rest and the sleep that you can will be beneficial. Yeah. Okay. So wonderful.
Well, Dr. Barr, thank
Yeah,
you so much. This has
you are.
been, I just want to say how amazing this has been for all of us to be able to take the time and connect on more of the mental space. I know that our patients and our audience as a whole really appreciates it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I was just gonna say, I know that we're just about at time, but I also wanted to just name that, we talked a lot about our individual nervous systems, but because our neuroception is attuned to that in between, right? We also contribute to a community nervous system. So being in community like this is really part of the healing process too, right? Connection and community really matters. And I love that you don't have to go through this alone. Um, oh, yeah. If what we talked about today resonated with you and you wanted to explore this deeper, I'm actually offering a program that talks a lot about this, and each week inside we call it the Reset Lab because we're all experimenting with our own nervous systems. It starts on the 7th, and we meet every week for 90 minutes where we dive deeper into this material so that you can create a toolbox that'll be stocked with tools and practices and resources to help build your resilience, help turn down the volume on your alarm system so you can get your elevator moving with more ease. So this QR code just shares more about the program. And we do a lot of movement that you can do from standing, sitting, and meeting your body wherever it's at. And for this group, I wanted to offer, it's the first time we're doing this, so a founding members savings for you, but if it feels aligned, that would be amazing to have you join us. It's going to be a really exciting time. And again, if there's any questions, any concerns that come up, please feel free to shoot me an email. I welcome you reaching out, and just want to thank you so much for inviting me into your community to share this. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barr. And I just want to say for the entire group, this recording will be available on our YouTube page. There will be an email that will be sent out at the end of the week, so everybody will receive this recording. And thanks to amazing, engaged volunteers and members like Dr. Barr and everyone on the phone, we are able to not only support the organization, but continue further the mission. So thank you so much to everyone for spending your Tuesday night with us, and I hope that everyone has a great night.
Bye. Thank you.